ASU football should take down BYU this weekend, and that would make it the win of the decade.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw. I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. This is a special crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils as I sit down with Locked On Big 12's host, Drake Toll, and we talk about ASU against BYU this week. We're going to talk about why ASU will beat BYU, why it is the win of the decade, therefore. We're going to talk about why ASU might lose. And we're going to talk about what this game means for Arizona State to be able to take down BYU. That's all coming up in just a moment. Before we get that far, though, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't shout out my Roy player of the week. Now, if you guys aren't aware what Roy is, it's your place to give NIL money directly to your favorite players. My Roy performance of the week, it's going to Jordan Tyson. 12 catches, almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. I am going to be making a $100 donation to Jordan Tyson through the Roy app. If you want to do that for yourself, you can go to joinroy.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON, and every athlete for every team is there. There's no purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Join roy.com for full terms. All right. Shout out Jordan Tyson. Shout out you guys for making us your first listen of the day. And I will see you in just a moment with Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Till next time, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.
Arizona State is going to beat BYU and take the Cougars out of playoff contention, aren't they? Aren't they? It would just make too much sense at this point, and that could be bad. This is a crossover. Locked On Big 12, Locked On Sun Devils.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Sun Devils crossover. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That's Richie Bradshaw from Arizona State's #1 podcast. That's Locked On Sun Devils. Thank you for making our shows your first listen every single day. Off the top, Arizona State will beat BYU. If that's what happens, let's justify it. In the middle segment, the Cougars are going to win, right? They're the better football team. Let's paint devil's advocate on both sides of the coin, and then we'll end with Arizona State in the college football playoff is a sentence that somehow makes sense right now. How did we get here? If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Richie, if Sunday even, the statement is, wow, Arizona State beat BYU. What happened other than Arizona State having more points?
That's always a good start. I think it comes down to just being more physical in the trenches and being able to establish Cam Scadaboo, you know, people's running back.
He's good. He's good. Yeah. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Last I checked, he runs the football really good and he catches the football real good. Yeah. You've also got Sam Levitt is playing at a ridiculously high level. And you are the perfect person to bring this up with. Besides Shadur Sanders in the last month, who in the Big 12 has been playing as well as Sam Levitt?
Sawyer Robertson of Baylor is in that category too, which is wild. We're talking about Sam Levitt, Sawyer Robertson, a guy who was supposed to captain Sam Levitt, a 3-9 team, Sawyer Robertson, who was the backup to start the year, and a Heisman contender in Shadur Sanders. That's wild that those are the three guys that now come up as maybe the cream of the crop, actively at least.
And that's the best part of the Big 12 is everything that we thought we knew, we actually have no idea. And back to ASU BYU, it's going to come down to who the more physical team is in the trenches. If ASU gets Cam Scadaboo going, they're going to have a really good chance to win this game. What's funny is even when Scadaboo's not going, they still find a way. He had barely 3 yards of carry this past weekend on 25 carries. It's not like they shied away from getting him the football because they know how integral he is. So he's still going to get touches against BYU, whether he's averaging 6 yards a carry or 2.5 yards a carry. From there, it's just about if Scadaboo's not going, can Sam Levitt step up? And he has 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in the last 3 games. So I like my odds.
Yeah, that's how you say good if you're an Arizona State fan, especially. ESPN gives the Sun Devils a 56% chance of victory. They're playing at home. They're in that weird afternoon slot as well, which is just kind of funky for everybody, and you want to be the home team there. We don't get, I feel like, a ton of those in the Big 12 when the game's out west. You're going to see those at night more often than not. This one is in that mid-afternoon slot. Does it feel like the oddity, okay, of 8-2 Arizona State versus 9-1 BYU, 2 teams we had no idea would be here, playing in that slot, playing in the desert, that bodes well for the home team?
It's so interesting when it comes to the scheduling out in the West and especially down in the South, like Arizona. Towards the beginning of the year, it's 115 out. So yes, they save those games for later in the evening when the kids aren't going to pass out on the field. But then later in the year, and this is a perfect scenario, is even a high stakes game like this, which the winner of this game is almost certain to go to the Big 12 championship game, unless we just continue to have madness, which at this point, why wouldn't it happen? But this turns into a day game. And if it's earlier in the season with the same stakes, you're talking about this as an evening game that more people are going to tune into. Hopefully, not too many people are going to be sucked in by game day being in Columbus to cover Ohio State for the 3rd time this year.
Yeah.
And they will understand that this game has just as much at stake as Indiana, Ohio State does. It's just funny how that stuff works, because early in the year you get dark night games and there's nothing on. And then later in the year you have a game like this and it's like, this feels like something that should have a little more publication to it, but nope.
And hopefully Arizona State fans bring the boom this week, and I'm sure they will. The energy palpable, unexpectedly palpable for Arizona State fans as they are now in the thick of the Big 12 championship hunt. I want to go analytically. Arizona State, 21st in the country running the football from an EPA standpoint, efficiency standpoint. And while BYU's defense is top 20 themselves, that is a unstoppable force, immovable object meeting one another on Saturday for 2 teams that are very good at that one thing, and that's defending the run or running the football. So while I think, and you mentioned the trenches, it could be decided there. Here's the big stat that I circle, Richie, and I want to get your thoughts on if Arizona State truly has given this on the eye test and they could deliver this.
Hey.
BYU, 74th in the country defensively on 3rd and 4th down success. They do not. Somehow, it's the kryptonite of the BYU defense. They do not find ways to get off the field on late downs. 74th in the nation. Arizona State offensively, 20th in the country on 3rd and 4th down success rate. This is a team that just went on the road and beat Kansas State. Is that the kind of stat, late downs, that could decide this for Arizona State?
Oh, it definitely is, because it all comes back to the all-important and sometimes super overrated time of possession. And in a game like this, where it is going to be very pivotal to keep the other team off the field, if ASU is able to win the time of possession battle, and if they can find a way to win it pretty convincingly, that's really going to go in your favor. Especially it's going to get the defense rested, all that good stuff, and go up against a BYU offense that has been pretty darn good this year. And ASU's defense, it's super hit and miss. Like, there's some games and there's some moments where they're phenomenal, and there's other moments where they're just not. The weirdest thing from them this year is against Big 12 opponents. Yeah. If you have a stud running back, and just about every team in the Big 12 has, you are going over 100 rushing yards against ASU. I don't know why. It's happened all year. We thought we were good against DJ Giddens. He had like 50 yards at half and then ended with over 100 because he had bunch of chunk yards. So BYU could be able to run the football. And if they do, then that's going to help them out with the time of possession. But ASU being effective on 3rd downs, BYU's defense not being effective on 3rd downs, that could really swing in the favor of ASU when it comes to time of possession, which could be really important, and sometimes it's not important at all.
Yeah, I mean, time of possession is key. Obviously, in most scenarios, BYU, it matters a little less because of Kalani Sitake's focus on that middle 8. He thinks if he can win those middle 8 minutes, he doesn't care what you do with the ball the rest of the time. Those 8 minutes are what won them that Kansas State game earlier this year. But then to push back on your point and saying that BYU's offense has been very good, that's what they gave off, especially a few weeks ago against UCF and even against Oklahoma State. Their offense was spectacular. BYU has 3 touchdowns in its last 26 possessions. 1 of 12 against Utah, 1 of 8 against Kansas on drives that end in touchdowns. That is not good. Richie, coming up, though, BYU is still a formidable opponent if they win. What does it look like? This is a crossover, Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I love how I just said one singular 5 Hour Energy, because honestly, it could save your life. It saved mine. Saturday night, I'm leaving a wedding, like tie is loosened, and I was watching the BYU game on my phone. They lose, and it's like, oh, that's not good. So I slam a 5 Hour Energy because that's what's going to get me back in the game. 5 Hour Energy is my favorite pick-me-up, and we pair it with college football with a brand new flavor. Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot. That fan fuel, the energy shot, is made for super fans just like us. So a huge play in the latest game, a big upcoming match, an exciting moment are all made better with 5 Hour Energy. They know that no matter what, I mean, truly, no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart. So your 5 Hour Energy Stand the Fan shot is here for you to keep you fueled throughout the game. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available at 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. Visit 5hourenergy.com and do it today. Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils. BYU is still a very good football team. You said on your show last week that Kansas State game, up until a few hours prior to putting your official preview out, you thought there's really no way the Arizona State's not going to get it done on the road. Obviously, they did. Do you have that same feeling early this week about BYU that, man, you're just going against a juggernaut?
Funny enough, I'm actually pretty confident about this game. What's so weird about the Kansas State game is that goes back all the way to the summer when I was doing preseason stuff. As I looked at the schedule, I said, you're going to Manhattan, the Little Apple.
Circle that one, yeah.
Yep. In the middle of November, that's cold. That's a good football team. There's no way you win that.
Right.
And I felt that way right up until I recorded my little game day show, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm going in. But when I look at the BYU game, in the preseason, obviously we had no big expectations for ASU or BYU. Yeah. So at the time, I'm like, oh, yeah, they should win. That should be an even game. Turns out it is an even game. It's just not between two bad teams. It's between two good teams. And I do like your odds against BYU, if for no other reason than the stakes have never been higher for an ASU football game in Tempe in years. There's also a lot of intrigue not behind the scenes that's going into this weekend. It's senior day and it's homecoming. I don't know if that's normal.
Gosh. Why is it homecoming in late November? What?
Right? I'm sitting there. I'm like, don't you normally split those? And they're like, no, they're together. And I'm like, well, that's a powder keg, I guess. Yeah. And sorry, with Arizona sports.
Yeah.
When you are good, when you're a good team, everyone is all about it. You have some of the most loyal fans in the world. When you're not a good team, ASU, Arizona Cardinals, Phoenix Suns, whatever, people don't care because you can do, there's so much to do in a metropolitan area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with ASU being good, people are going to go to this game. I saw on ESPN at the start of the year, you could get tickets to this BYU game. Cheapest seats, probably $25 to $30. Cheapest seats right now by ESPN, $202. This is a game that has very much driven a lot of attention from people in the Valley. And no matter what, they're going to say it's a sellout. Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to be at least 95% capacity for this game.
Yeah, that's going to be good. I do think that part of that 95% will be BYU fans. They'll show up.
Yes.
They're still going to be very rowdy. They travel well
They
all of
travel
the
very
time. They have a
well.
big Phoenix. There's a massive Phoenix hub of BYU fans, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has so many missionaries in that area that will likely be at this game as well. Richie,
Yes.
if that headline on Sunday is BYU beats Arizona State, what went wrong for the Sun Devils?
I would say that if they lose, it would be because Sam Levitt not even came back down to earth. He just plummeted in a game that mattered the most. The reason why you've been winning these last 3 weeks, and you've been winning not convincingly, but you feel good about those wins for the majority of the game.
K-State gave you, by the way, in like 2004, which is crazy. Like, we're talking about a kid born in 2004 that's got the team on his back this weekend. That's wild.
Yep. It's crazy that we're at that point, Drink. It's awesome. And there's 16-year-old kids that are getting recruited for 2026. And I'm like, I have arthritis in my knees. I'm 30 years old. I'm not a fan of this.
That's great.
And
this kid's
wonderful.
Just born in 2004, standing out there with Arizona State on his back. And I think you're right.
Yep.
If he doesn't meet the moment, that's BYU's best shot. But if Sam Levitt is at his peak, based on the way the BYU offense has played, it's going to be tough. But again, I agree. So what you're saying here, if Sam Levitt has a complete drop-off, you don't think the run game for Arizona State could salvage the game enough to beat BYU?
You would have to go all in on Cam. And again, Cam Scadaboo is capable of doing that, and they're going to give him 25 carries, whether he's killing it or not.
Yeah.
But we've seen teams this year that will sell out on Cam Scadaboo, and they'll tell Sam Levitt, okay, beat us with your arm. The last 3 weeks, it's worked. Earlier in the season, there's been times where ASU has struggled. Texas Tech was very much a game where Sam Levitt was just not able to get anything going. Against Texas State, Cam Scadaboo was under 3 yards a carry. And if it wasn't for his 2 touchdowns and some defensive efforts, you might not have won that game. There's plenty of examples this year of instances where the game came down to Sam Levitt, and especially recently, he's been able to respond more often than not. This is another really good football team, and similar to K-State, they are battling for their Big 12 playoff lives right now to be able to move on. So BYU is not going to come in here quietly, and they're not going to go down quietly. This is going to be a slugfest. If Levitt doesn't respond, you're in trouble.
I think the one area I was like, okay, BYU is going to dominate here is Arizona State being porous themselves defensively on 3rd and 4th down, 83rd in the country. They're just not very good on 3rd and 4th down. They're not very good at getting themselves off the field defensively, but BYU's offense is 97th in the nation on 3rd and 4th down. They're not very good at staying on the field. This is movable object meets movable objects and something.
Very stoppable force.
Right. Are crashing when BYU and Arizona State get on 3rd and 4th down when the Cougars are on offense. But here is the biggest gap that I find analytically is BYU defensively 8th in the country against the drop back. Arizona State 32nd dropping back and throwing the football. While 32nd's pretty darn good nationally, a top 10 defense is elite. And for BYU offensively, 14th in the country running the ball. Arizona State 27th guarding the run efficiency-wise. That's still very good. The problem is BYU's elite in those 2 categories, pass defense, rush offense. Does that worry? I mean, do the efficiencies worry you, or are you just carrying that much of a chip on your shoulder after what happened last weekend?
The efficiencies certainly are important, and the stats in that area, especially at this point in the year, where you're 10 games in, that's what you are. It's not inflated by a handful of games. That's what BYU is. Levitt has played good the last 3 weeks. He's not played a secondary that is elite as what BYU is playing. K-State was about average in the conference. I think when I looked, they're like 9th or 10th against the pass. Oklahoma State, not good anywhere. UCF, they're pretty easy to move the football on. This is a good BYU defense, especially when it comes to passing the ball. And one of the things that I love about Sam Levitt, and one of the things that drives me crazy about Sam Levitt, is there's one guy that he really likes to throw the football to. It's Jordan Tyson, who's wide receiver 1. He's phenomenal. I love him. But if BYU, and no one's done this year, so this would be another interesting thing. If BYU looks at number 0 and they say, we're going to double him or we're going to put him in brackets and we're going to find a way to eliminate him from the game plan, what is he going to do? Like, I love the tight end, Shimon Mateer. I've been pounding the drum for the whole year for him to get more targets. I think the most catches he's had in a game is 5. After that, I don't know if another player anywhere in the receiver room that has had more than 3 catches in a game this year. Tyson just caught 12. Yeah. He consistently gets double-digit targets a game. Like, if BYU decides to target number 0 and take Jordan Tyson as much out of the equation as you can, what's Sam Levitt going to look like? It's when you take a quarterback's best friend away, and a young quarterback, one who was born in 2004.
One who was born in 2004, and here he is on the football field for Arizona State, leading them against BYU this weekend. Crazy that's where we are in college football right now, our children. Man, it's always been that way, but it gets crazier and crazier. Richie, Arizona State could go to the college football playoff. What? Let's talk about it. Locked on Big 12, Locked on Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Roy. Roy is where I go week in and week out for one thing, and that is to give money to student athletes. Cam Scattaboo this week is my Roy Player of the Week, and I'm giving him $100 for what he did in his performance against Kansas State, and you can do the very same thing. You can make a difference in the life of a college athlete that you know, that you love, and fans, when you download that Roy app, you are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Show your support for Cam Scattaboo. Join Roy, ROY.com. We're going to throw some money into his account on Roy. Every contribution counts. Download the Roy app. Join Roy.com. Use promo code Locked On. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go join Roy.com. That is joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players. Change the game. Today's show is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. We talk about changing the game. Mint Mobile is doing that, and they are doing that with your money. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. When Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them out. I was like, that sounds like there's got to be a catch. Turns out $15 a month. Wireless plan. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see right now 3 months, $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is. To get this new customer offer, your 3-month premium wireless, $15 a month, mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege, mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill. Cut your wireless bill by $15. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. That is Mint Mobile. Richie Bradshaw, Locked on Sun Devils. I mean, Arizona State in a month could be punching its ticket to the college football playoff. This is like the time. It's like the time I went to the airport and had too many mimosas. It's just like, he's just talking crazy. What's happening with that guy? That's what this feels like. This feels like a really weird holiday at the in-laws. What's going on, not just in college football, but specifically with Arizona State in college football?
If you talk to Kenny Dillingham, what he's going to tell you is that there's a culture and the players have created the culture and he's just there. If you talk to the players, they're going to say, Kenny Dillingham created the culture. We're here to execute. You are seeing these players, and not just Kenny Dillingham, but the coaching staff he's put together. And it's a great coaching staff that have really bought in together. And you added a lot of talent in the offseason, sure, but these guys are playing as a unit. One of the things that really, really stood out to me on Saturday night, talking with safety Xavier Alford, who had one of the interceptions earlier in the game, they sat down with him, and he's someone that we in the media get to talk to pretty consistently, and was like, hey, you just beat the number 16 team in the nation on the road. How are you feeling? He responds, paraphrasing, of like, yeah, it's cool. We're on to the next one. And having that mindset is crazy, because I'm sitting there and I'm like, I would at least celebrate on Sunday or something. Like you're just on to the next one. That's right. That's business, and that's a powerful place to be. And it's exciting to see an ASU team that is so dialed in, and we haven't seen an ASU team this dialed in under the Herm Edwards era. We haven't seen it since early in the Todd Graham era. It's not something that we're really used to seeing from this team. And clearly, even though they said all offseason, oh, we don't care that we were ranked 16th out of 16, and we don't care that we're coming off 3-3 or 3-win seasons consecutive, blah, blah, blah. They clearly had that as billboard material and whiteboard material, because that's something that has very obviously motivated them to play above the level that they're at right now. So it's a talented team. This is a driven team, and it's a team that has a lot of determination to continue to prove people wrong.
Richie, as far as the Locked On Big 12 podcast goes, there are listeners from all 16 fan bases. One of the prevalent questions is, will it be worth it for the Big 12 for Colorado and BYU to be bumped out of the college football playoff and Arizona State be that representative? Which of those three teams could win or has the best possibility of winning at the national level? Is it going to be worth it if Arizona State is our representative compared to a Colorado or BYU?
So here's the interesting thing, is ASU does not have any kind of media poll that BYU has had this year as the Cinderella team, or that Colorado has with Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter. You look at ASU, and I don't know how many people around the country or outside of the Big 12 are aware of Kenny Dillingham and everything that has changed, which is a shame because they're an 8-2 football team. But that's what happens when you are in the cellar for years. It's going to take some time for people to notice, like, hey, this ASU team, they've been good for a little bit now. So if you get them to the playoff, there's not a lot of people that are really going to care about that game. Like if it's Alabama, Arizona State, a lot of people might tune out and be like, oh yeah, Bama's going to thrash them. Arizona State, one of the things that's impressed me about them this year, they play up to their competition. They have not stooped low to play lower tier competition. You crushed Wyoming at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Texas State they were
very good.
Iffy. Yeah. But I mean, you stepped up when you needed to. Mississippi State at the beginning of the year seemed okay. As you told me on the podcast, the Big 12 squad, Blake Shapen is one of the quarterbacks of all time, and he certainly was in that game. It's a team that plays above to their competition. So if they made it to the playoff, it depends who they play. Like, I assume you probably aren't getting a bye week.
Yeah. I mean, you might have to go to Notre Dame in round one, or to Tennessee, and that's not fun.
No, it's not at all. And those are teams that we are expecting to win one, maybe two games, or who knows, maybe they get a little special run going.
Yeah.
There's not going to be expectations for the Sun Devils to win a game in the playoff. And who knows, maybe that works out for them the way that they have been playing this year against the odds. But I love this ASU team. They're not at that level to compete for a championship. You could get a playoff win because you could catch someone off guard.
Yeah.
That would be the furthest you could go, is a playoff win. And then build on it and see that recruiting start ticking up and build from there. But that's probably best case scenario, and it really depends who you play.
It's the dangerous combination to me of a young quarterback, the wily veteran running back, an offensive line who's been more impressive than expected, a wide receiver one that you can trust, who's also young in his own respect, but has meshed with that young quarterback, and the continuity that the staff has brought from Dillingham himself to the coordinators. These guys have revolutionized what football is at Arizona State and done it very quickly. We're seeing, when I think young quarterback, young, good wide receiver, I think Arizona, Ted McMillan and Noah Fafita, who have done nothing this season. Instead, I think what we expected out of them is what we're getting from Arizona State in that young core in the passing game, then the veteran running back behind them. That to me is a recipe for upsetting a Tennessee, for upsetting a Notre Dame, for upsetting somebody in that, even Indiana. Let's say Indiana ends up at that 5 spot or that 8 spot, somewhere in that conglomerate, and Arizona State's at 9 or 10 and faces them round 1. I love the odds for the Sun Devils because they've got, at least for a game, something sneaky up their sleeves in a wily quarterback and a veteran running back. Richie, have you pinched yourself yet? Is this crazy for you?
A little bit. And going again to the earlier days of the Big 12 squad, I remember when ASU started 2-0 and we were all poking fun. And one of the things I said was, we're just happy to be here. Like, we're just having fun winning. Nobody expected this. Like, the most delusional ASU fans in the world would not have been able to tell you that you were 2 games away from going to a Big 12 championship and having a serious chance to win it, win the conference, and go to the playoff in the first year that they were there. I said preseason, this is a 7-5 football team, and I felt I was being optimistic. Yeah. They're at 8 wins. There's 2 more games left in the year. The sky is the limit for where they can end right now. I've been having to pinch myself every single day for the entirety of the season because you're kind of waiting for everything to derail, and it hasn't happened. And at this point, I don't know if it will. They're all in, and it's fun.
It's stunning what's happening right now at Arizona State in year 1 in the Big 12. As upset as Utah fans have been to be here, Arizona State has used their membership to springboard themselves into the national conversation. That is Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils. Drake Toll with Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making these shows your first listen every single day. Come back the rest of this week, including on Thursday for that squad show, as we give you a rundown, a breakdown, a something on BYU, Arizona State. This has been, and always will be, a crossover with Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Dose Grande.